Hello and welcome to the Armwood Opinion channel here on YouTube. I hope you enjoyed today's video and I hope you will like it and subscribe to this channel. We provide opinions on political, cultural, and technological issues just about each and every week. And today we're going to be talking about Black History Month. Why do we need it? Why do we need Black History Month? I've heard from some white people, well, we don't have White History Month. Why do you need Black History Month? I mean, to many of us this might be self-evident, but to others, of course, it's not. So we're going to discuss the whys, wherefores, and wherehows as to why we need Black History Month. We live in America, a country that was made, that was created out of the historical conquest of the continent of North America. Immigrants came from Europe, conquered the indigenous population living here, and enslaved another population from the continent of Africa, brought them here to build a new nation. Quite simply, that's what happened. The history that we learn, that we study, is the history of the conquerors. The conquerors were white. In other words, every month, every day of every month is White History Day, White History Month, White History Year. We are taught white history as if it is the only history. The history of peoples of African descent, the histories of indigenous peoples are left out of the American story. Or when they're mentioned as an adjacent part of the European story, as if that's the only history. And I have actually heard highly educated white people say there is no history but that of Europe. This is what white history and white history every day has done. It's created an ignorance, a lack of knowledge on the part of everyone. White people need Black History Month probably more than black people do, because they know even less about the history of peoples of African descent. We are taught as if the whole world waited for white people to appear out of the forests of Europe onto the historical stage. We're taught as if there was no history prior to the emergence of ancient Greece and later Rome and the Roman Empire. This is obviously not true. We know that ancient Egypt and ancient Nubia, now called Ethiopia, are much older. Chinese civilization is much older. Persian civilization is much older. But these are ignored in the narrative which is told in the schools that we in our children and grandchildren have experienced. We haven't learned that there were great civilizations in Africa, from West Africa, the Western Sudan, Ghana, Mali, and Sangay, the three great empires of the Western Sudan, to Great Zimbabwe in Southern Africa, to the Nile Valley culture, which is an African culture, not a Middle Eastern culture, not a European culture. The European conquerors from Greece came very, very late in the story. The stories of peoples of African descent on the world stage have been purposefully hidden and obscured, to the fact that Egyptian statues were systematically removed of their noses. Go into any museum. Anybody who spent time in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York or the Brooklyn Museum, which have large Egyptian collections, will see all of the broken noses. Look at the Sphinx's nose, broken. The rest of these statues are intact. Why? It was done purposefully to cover up the contributions of Africans to world civilization. Nobody tells you why the expression from here to Timbuktu arose. It was during Europe's dark ages that the Vatican in Rome sent its scholars to study at the great university in Timbuktu, the capital of the Empire of Mali in Western Africa. They don't tell you about that. And here in the United States, oh my goodness, they don't talk to you. They don't teach you about David Walker and his pamphlet in 1828. David Walker's appeal to the colored citizens of the world, and particularly those in the United States, calling for armed revolt by slaves against their slave masters, stating that to be Christians and Christian men, that slaves could not submit to their white slave masters because they could not engage in the duties required of them as men and be slaves. Those of us who had the good fortune to go to schools where there were black studies, or as we now call it, Africana studies, learned about this. We read these books. I have a copy of David Walker's Appeal, 1828, on my shelf right here. Or move a few years later. We were taught in school about Harriet Beecher Stowe, the white liberal, who wrote a book called Uncle Tom's Cabin, about like the good, helpless black man who did everything the white people asked, and they still treated him badly. Well, a black writer named Barton Delany wrote a book in 1854 in direct response to Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin. It was called Blake or the Huts of America. And that book wasn't about a poor, helpless slave. That book was about a slave rebellion that starts in Cuba and spreads to both North and South America. The first Pan-African document ever written. They don't talk about that because they want you to see black folks as either mean, horrible beasts or as poor, helpless, defenseless slaves, but not as people in control of their own destiny. And that's the key. We have been the authors of our struggle. We have led our fights. And you're not taught that in American history. And that's why it's so important to learn black history, why it's so important to learn African history, Caribbean history, to see them as one, to read books like Eric Williams, the first Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, his monumental thesis while he was in college entitled Capitalism and Slavery, or another Caribbean writer, Walter Rodney, his book How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, or the great Caribbean writer C.L.R. James, The Black Jacobins, which is the story of the Haitian Revolution, the rebellion on Hispaniola, where that imperialist conqueror and pirate Christopher Columbus first landed, which led to the enslaving of Africa, and at one time the richest colony in all the Western Hemisphere. The leaders of that rebellion, Toussaint de Louverture, Christophe, and Dessalines, were able to beat the French, the Spanish, and the British, the only successful slave rebellion in human history. But they don't teach you about that. There's no movie about Toussaint de Louverture, Christophe, or Dessalines, or the Haitian Revolution. There's a movie about Spartacus in Rome, in the Latifundia, which only lasted 2 years, that rebellion. I wonder why there's none about the Haitian Revolution. We all know why. We don't hear about the rebellions in this country, except maybe Nat Turner. Very little about people like Denmark Vesey, or the Maroons in Jamaica, or the Maroons in Guyana. Understand, Western imperialism did not recognize borders when the slave trade occurred between the United States, the Caribbean, and South America. We're not taught that there were more slaves in Brazil than there were in the United States. All of this we're not taught. Then the achievements of African Americans, people like the real McCoy, who invented the stoplight. The fact that black people were involved in the creation of all kinds of technologies in the United States and in the Caribbean and in Africa. We're not taught that the peoples of West Africa, many of the peoples, knew about astronomy. They knew the world was round long before Europeans dreamed of the idea. We're not taught about these things. Every day is White History Day. Every month is White History Month. We have Black History Month because our history has been ignored, erased, smashed into pieces, and hidden from us. And that's why I made this video this February 2019. You guys have a great day. I hope you are enjoying this, and I hope you will hit the like button, subscribe to this channel if you'd like to hear more videos like this, or watch more videos like this, a better way of putting it. And hopefully I will see you in the next one. Have a great day.